So I thought about, all this Horus Christ thing, and whether the Hotep niggas or the Egyptologists and the Kemetans and ones like Shakka, Ahmose being more hardened, like Pharaoh was hardened. And, somebody had to go tell Shakka, and tell a lot of them that your Horus is not our Christ, is not our Moshiach. In other words, the Horus that y'all call Horus is not Christ. And the whole 3-day thing is kind of a perfect example of it. And yet one will say it's so similar, right? And it is similar, but similar doesn't mean the same, right? And as you study, this false allegation and this attempt to say, well, Christ, the New Testament was plagiarized out of ancient Egypt. The Messiah, the coming of the Messiah was an ancient hope, right? The coming of the Anointed and the coming of the Bein Ha-Elohim, not just for Israel, but for all humanity. That's what the Bible tells us when it speaks about the seed, right? The seed of the woman. It was an ancient hope, right? Yet some try to make their own Messiah, work out their own righteousness. Just like with the Israelites, we have within the scripture where they had a zeal, right? Had a zeal for God, but wasn't according to the true knowledge. And also, not according, they didn't mix what they heard with faith. Instead, they try to get all intellectual. And that's what I think this whole debate thing, there's a good thing in reasoning, but in some of this debate thing, because a lot of points are kind of like, not really being addressed, like the whole third day, Horus ascended after a third day, and therefore Christ ascended. No, he did not ascend the third day. Maybe 43 days, if you compare what we find in Acts of the Apostles, chapter 1, verse 3 with verse 11. Shakka will just point to verse 11 and then give you a little piece of Luke 24 and 46 and think that you don't recognize that ascending from the dead is different than ascending into heaven. Remember, in ancient Egypt, the whole thing was, the book of the dead. Well, not in ancient Egypt, but that's the Egypt that these niggas know. Right? Because they're not going to the root and the truth. But somebody go tell Shakka, right? And the rest of these Hotep niggas that your Horus is not our Christ. Right? Your Horus is not our Christ. And Pharaoh, let our people go. Our people are all caught up in this confusion. Right? All caught up in this confusion, and they perish because of a lack of knowledge. Something so simple as that. Did Christ ascend the third day? Ascend? Ascend from what? Ascend from the dead. Did he ascend into heaven the third day? Nah. The scripture doesn't say that. Go read Acts chapter 1 verse 3 and Acts chapter 1 verse 11. Read John chapter 20 verse 17. Then compare it with Luke 24:46, where it says that he rose from the dead. To where? To earth. Right? That's why he rose from the dead. Right? To earth. That's why he was found in the garden in John 20:17. Then in Acts 1:11, after 40 days, right, he ascended. So maybe if it's 40 plus the 3, was it 43 days? Is it that time right there? Or is it something like 53 days? One thing we know, it was not the third day. So your Horus, your so-called Horus, is not our Christ. Similar does not mean the same. But the ancient hope of the Messiah, yeah, the Messiah was an ancient hope.